Hello, listeners. I have a very quick announcement to make before we get into today's episode. As you may know, October is ADHD Awareness Month, and I would like to offer you, the listeners of the ADHD Goals Podcast, a very special discount. A 30% discount on all of my ADHD digital workbooks, and also a 30% discount on my one-to-one ADHD coaching. So if you want to get the discount on the workbooks, simply go to the link in the show notes, head on over to my website and the resources page, and use the coupon code COACH30. If you would like to try the ADHD one-on-one coaching, then again, there's a link in the show notes, and you can book a free consultation call where we'll discuss how the coaching works. And then you can purchase a block of either 4, 8, or 12 coaching sessions, and you can use the coupon code there. It's 30% off. So if you've been sitting on the fence and wanting to try ADHD coaching, but you don't know how to make it work, then with the 30% discount, that will surely be a good place to start. And the payments are spread out throughout the duration of the coaching sessions. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the ADHD Goals Podcast. I have a fantastic guest for you today. His name is Peter Shankman. He is a 6 times best-selling author, which includes the Faster Than Normal book, and also he's got a podcast of the same name, the Faster Than Normal podcast, and that is all about ADHD. So it is a privilege and an honor to have you on the show. But also you are an entrepreneur of a number of businesses and a keynote speaker. And yeah, you are calling from New York today. So how are you, Peter?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Fabulous. And so I'm excited to know, where did your ADHD journey start? Well, you've always had ADHD, but when did you find out about ADHD and take us from there?
I didn't get diagnosed until my late 30s. 52 right now. So for me, it was growing up being told that you're disrupting the class, right? Mm-hmm. Sit down, you're causing trouble. It was years of being told that I was difficult. It was years of having the social acuity of a turnip. Really just did not have the ability to regulate or to moderate or to know when to shut up. Caused a lot of drama, caused a lot of trouble for me growing up. And it was difficult. It got easier over the years, even before I got diagnosed. You know, I started realizing certain things I didn't know it was ADHD, but I started realizing certain things about me and realizing that I could do certain things to alter how my brain worked, right? I could do certain things to prevent myself from speaking out when I should have just kept quiet or things like that. So over time, I was able to sort of change a lot of the way that I functioned. But yeah, getting diagnosed for me really just validated everything I was already doing. It wasn't so much that it wasn't like this light bulb moment. It was sort of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Sure. I of course I have ADHD. Go from there, type thing.
I had a similar thing in terms of I went through my youth and my 20s sort of never really looking at myself in a questioning self about, I could improve these things. Selfishly, I was always thought I was right and I was never really wrong. It was only in my 30s where I started to question, maybe things haven't gone quite as well as I had thought they should have. And then I started to sort of be a bit more sort of challenge myself to questioning why certain things was. And that's when I started to sort of do some self-improvement things. And when I got my ADHD diagnosis, it was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. But I wonder, to be able to figure those things out and to be successful as you are with running businesses and writing books and starting podcasts, did you find those challenges before? Did you have any challenges setting those things up or being a success in those things before you knew about ADHD?
Yeah. I mean, it was difficult in my marriage. It was difficult in tons of ways. I mean, it was, the challenges for me, I thought were just being human. I thought that's what everyone dealt with. And imagine my surprise when I'm like, most people are like, no, we don't have those problems.
Mhm.
We don't, but on the flip side, people who don't have those problems also don't, um, come up with the idea for a company, start it and generate revenue within 24 hours, right? They don't fly to Asia for the sole purpose of writing a book on a plane and come back 36 hours after they took off with a written manuscript.
Uh-huh.
There are many, many benefits that I believe definitely outweigh the negatives, but you do have to understand how your brain works, and you do have to utilize your brain in a certain way. You have to put in, for lack of a better word, sort of rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Um, you have to put up guardrails, right?
Yeah.
It's equivalent of, if you had a Lamborghini
Mm.
and you were only used to driving like a Honda, that you had to floor to
Yeah.
accelerate highway speed. And then you get into a Lamborghini, flooring that is going to have an entirely different outcome. Right. And so for me, being able to know how to drive my faster brain is what benefits.
Yeah. I just wonder, you talk about, the few things that you mentioned there sounded, getting on the plane and coming back with a manuscript, things like that. It sounds like hyperfocus and impulsivity, but also a lot of creativity as well. I just wonder when you talk about the guardrails that you set up in order to be able to be successful, do you find that you were very self-sufficient in delivering on those things, or did you recognize that you needed support from other people in able to achieve those things?
I think a lot of what I've done has been self-sufficient, but
Mhm.
there is 100% a place for relying on others. But that being said, you have to be very careful on whose advice you take, on whose help you rely
Mm.
on whose help you rely. You One thing I've learned is that there is no shortage of opinions.
Mhm.
Everyone will offer you their opinion. What's the quote I once heard? Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. Um, but the issue is someone's opinion on what's best for you 99% of the time is not what's actually best for you. It's what's best for them. Right.
Well,
And that is a huge difference. I'm a skydiver in my spare time, and I heard a wonderful quote once from a skydiver. I was bitching about the fact that my skydiving friends didn't understand why I skydive. My skydiving friends didn't understand why I'd want to go back home. This whole sort of dichotomy. And this older skydiver, and you want to listen to older skydivers because if they're older and still skydiving, it means they've been smart enough not to die. This older skydiver said to me, Peter, if you can't change the people around you, change the people around.
mm,
And that took me a second. And once I got it, my head exploded. It is, we're on this earth for such a short amount of time, microseconds in the grand scheme of things. Don't waste the time you do have here listening to people who don't jive with you. Find your own sort of group or tribe of people whose magic works with your magic.
mm.
your magic isn't for everyone. That's probably the hardest lesson I've learned, but the truest lesson I've learned. My brand of magic is very much not for anyone.
Mm. When you talk about support, you it sounds like you're talking about, people to, to give advice and things like that. I suppose when I asked the question, I was thinking more along the lines of I see myself as having a lot of different ideas and almost like a, solopreneur, entrepreneur. And when I have the idea and I can have those moments where I can, flesh them out and I think this is going to be amazing. I'm going to get down and do this. It's there's a naivety there before I start of all the things that are then going to pop up and I'll need to do. And I start with a great enthusiasm and optimism, and a willingness to find out and figure out all the steps I need to take to overcome all those things. But somewhere along the way, it becomes overwhelming, and I'm learning lots of different job roles to be able to deliver this. But it sounds to me that for you, you've had a lot of success in that. So what I was sort of thinking was, were you just adept at being able to overcome those challenges, or did you seek support from other people to be able to deliver those things or outsource things?
I took me. Yeah, I am very much. I'm very good at what I know how to do, and I'm very good at what I love to do. I'm terrible at the things that I'm not good at, and I'm terrible at the things I hate. So I have learned in the past 25 years to outsource the stuff I'm terrible at, because I will be better served by not doing it. Perfect example, I did not schedule this interview.
Yeah.
My assistant did. And that's not because I'm the guy who has an assistant, go talk to my people. It's because if I scheduled it, it probably wouldn't happen. I would either forget to schedule it or I'd get to put it in the calendar or whatever. In fact, I've had my assistant now over 15 years, same one. And she, about 6 months into her tenure with me, I go to put something in my calendar and it's not working. And Google Calendar's not working. And I'm like, Megan, something's wrong with the Google Calendar. She's like, no, it actually works fine. I just took away your write access to it. I'm sorry. She's like, yeah, if you want to do something, you can call me or email me. And if you can do it, I'll make it happen. I said, that's really presumptuous and rude. She goes, well, you scheduled 2 dinners on the same night. I'm like, okay, that's not a big deal. I can walk from one to the other. She goes, well, you scheduled them on separate continents, so you're done. And I have not had access to my calendar. I have read access to my calendar, but I've not had write access to my calendar in about 14 and a half years. And it's the best thing ever because I don't have to worry about it. I know that if there's something I need to do, I simply send it to Megan. And if I can do it, it's done.
Yeah. Well, that sounds incredible that you had the optimism to make both of those dinners in one evening.
Yes. And I'd say it's more about also knowing, again, it goes back to what I'm good at.
Yeah.
Right. I know what I'm great at and I know what I'm terrible at. And so what I'm terrible at, I simply don't bother with.
Yeah. So how did you get into, so you take us a little bit to the journey of, for instance, writing the book Faster Than Normal. Was that the first book you wrote or had you?
No, I've written 6. The first book I wrote was about customer experience. The first book I wrote was about PR. Second one was about social media. Third one and fourth one were about customer experience. Fifth one was Faster Than Normal. And the sixth one was a children's book version of Faster Than Normal called The Boy with the Faster Brain.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan on writing a book. I was actually, publisher Wiley reached out to me in 2005. Is like, hey, we like your blog. Do you ever thought about writing a book? And, like anyone's first book, it made no money, but it was, it proved to me I could do it. And then eventually in 2016, I got divorced and I'm still really good friends with my ex and we share a kid. But I wanted to figure out why I could write books in 24 hours or start companies and with no problem, but you couldn't make marriage work or didn't know when to shut up or whatever. And so over time, I wrote this book called Fast and Normal, which is the premise that's where I really came up with the concept that ADHD is a gift and neurodiversity as a whole is a gift. and so Fast and Normal blew up. It was my first New York Times bestseller. It really sort of shocked how well it. And it's interesting because from that, I've actually launched a company, one of several I run, called Mental Capital, which is a consulting firm. I launched it in partnership with a good friend of mine who's a psychologist. And together we help companies attract, hire, and retain neurodiverse employees while making workplaces more neuro-inclusive. Our clients include Morgan Stanley, Adobe, Google. And the premise, again, is to really sort of flip the conversation on neurodiversity and why it's so important in mental health as a whole, why we should be talking about it, things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wondered, the reason for asking how you got to writing the book is, did writing come naturally? Would you have considered yourself to be an author, or did the writing come out of being like a byproduct of running the businesses and sort of blogging?
I've always written. Yeah, I've always written. I grew up writing. I had a high school teacher named Mrs. Glassman who gave me a journal when I was 14. And she said, you should write in this. And I've written in a journal probably every day for the past, for 38 years.
Yeah.
I've always loved writing. I enjoy telling stories. It's why I'm a keynote speaker. And so it's probably the exact same thing. It's probably why I love writing so much.
Yeah. I've always struggled. I've always wanted to be somebody who wrote a journal. And then I've tried many times and kept it up for short amounts of time. But they're just sometimes, with writing publicly as well, I find it difficult with, perfectionism and things like that. And it just real stumbling block for me. But it is definitely something that I dream of being good at, though.
I think for me, I heard a great quote once: writers write.
Yeah.
That's literally what you do.
Yeah. So when you talk about making workplaces more inclusive and the work that you've done on that, what would you say right now is the one thing that workplaces should be focusing on?
I think one of the keys is to understand that everyone has a different brain, and to allow to go and allow to allow employees to work the best way they can is incredibly beneficial for the company. To allow them to work in a way that suits them. When work from home started during COVID, companies were shocked to find that productivity from certain employees went through the roof. And the reason that happened was because all of a sudden neurodivergent employees who might not do well in a office setting with lots of distractions and people coming over to their desk and constant meetings, all of a sudden they were able to work in a way that worked for them, which was at home by themselves, alone, quietly. And they were like, all these CEOs going, wow, how come this percentage of the company is doing so much better and this other company is the same or worse? Well, there you go. Right. And so it was very cool to see that happen. And so we're trying to teach companies that, hey, something as simple as allowing an employee to wear noise canceling headphones. I've done a little work for the government, and if someone identifies as neurodiverse and wants noise canceling headphones, if they have any sort of security clearance in the United States, government security clearance above basic, which is every person, which I have, anything above that, to get noise canceling headphones as an accommodation, they are required to see a psychiatrist that the government has cleared. And then they have to be labeled severely disabled.
Yeah.
In order to get something as simple as noise canceling headphones. No person in their right mind is going to torpedo their career with the label severely disabled just to get noise headphones. So they don't bother to get them, and they don't do their best work.
Yeah. Yeah. We have something similar in the UK called Access to Work. And it's something that you can, it's a grant that you can apply for to help if you've got to buy things for accommodations like a standing desk or headphones or particular dictation software, things like that, you can do that. But it takes a little bit of a while, and yes, it is a disability allowance as well. So I think there would be some trepidation for people, newly diagnosed in sort of going through that process as well, I think. Um, Something struck me as you were talking about sort of the changes that came about during, working from home during COVID. And I know from working here in the UK, um, I'd always observed um, uh, um, p- businesses in America. So I was a UX designer, so I followed a lot of people in the tech world, and it seemed to me that they seemed to operate quite well in developers and designers working with each other from across the country. So this ability to work remotely seemed like it was up and running and established in the US, whereas for here it was a little less so.
Well,
And
I would argue that it was established for people who work on their own,
right,
not for someone who works at Morgan Stanley or someone who works at Chase Bank or someone who, whatever. It was actually looked very much down
mm,
in that regard. So being able to show CEOs and bosses that, hey, this can actually work. It's not so much about the remote work, but about the fact that if you let employees work the way that best suits them, chances are your productivity is going to increase.
mm. I mean, what I was thinking is that during that time during COVID, it was basically pushing back on managers, the need to adapt their management style in terms of, like, let's say when everybody works in an office, they can walk in and they can walk around, they can see everybody's there, so they go, oh, everybody must be working, uh, rather than actually checking if the results are happening. And there's a certain culture of, let's book in a meeting so that it looks like I'm busy and everybody can tell me what they're doing so that it feels busy. But I suppose when you're working from home and you have to trust people to do the work rather than, having to be able to see them there, it's asking them to sort of adapt their management style, which is why there was a bit of a rush not to necessarily maintain that working from home once COVID, went by.
I think the bigger picture that we have to ask ourselves is, why did it take a pandemic to allow to get companies to give companies the ability to not fear change so much,
Mm,
right? The biggest problem that companies have is that they spend so much time fearing change. There's a great story about a zookeeper has five baboons in a cage, and one day he attaches a bunch of bananas to the roof and puts a ladder under. And over time, the baboons notice the bananas, and one of them actually climbs up the ladder and starts to eat the bananas. And as soon as he gets to the bananas and starts eating them, the other four baboons get blasted with ice cold water from a fire hose. And they have no idea why. The next day, the zookeeper puts a bunch of bananas up there, and again, one of the baboons go for it, and the other four again get blasted by the fire hose. Over time, they start to realize that every time they go for the bananas, they get blasted by a fire hose. So eventually they stop going for the bananas.
uh-huh.
Then at some point, the zookeeper takes one of the baboons out and replaces it with a new baboon who has no idea about the fire hose, but sees the bananas. And the second he reaches for the ladder, the other four baboons beat the shit out of him
Uh-huh.
because they know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The first man was, what the hell am I getting beaten up? Okay, I guess I'm not supposed to touch those bananas. And so he doesn't. And over time, the zookeeper replaces all five baboons with five new baboons, all of whom know not to go for those bananas, but none of whom have ever been hit with a fire hose. So they don't go for the bananas, but they have no idea why. That's the concept in business of, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Changing, not being afraid to shift and change, is what makes businesses grow.
Hmm. Yeah, I was speaking to someone recently about how, obviously businesses want to improve and optimize sort of for customer experiences, or they want to make sure that that their customers are getting a good experience, but are they investing the same amount of money into the experience of the workplace? Is that as big a priority?
No, it's not, and it needs to be.
Mm.
Companies, I can show you study after study. There's companies who do invest in their people tend to have happier people, tend to have better people. Those people are therefore better employees. And what's even more interesting is that, remember when I first started applying for jobs, I had one job in my life in the 90s, worked for America Online. And prior to getting that job, I remember I was applying. You'd read the newspaper, the Sunday job ads, and you'd find a job and you'd mail your resume. That's how people got hired. And then I got hired for AOL. I worked for America Online. I got hired by them because someone knew me and they were ready. That's when I realized that people actually drive change, not, resumes or not job ads. When you are good to your employees, when you invest in your employees, when you take care of them, when you allow them to work in a way that's best for them, they become happier employees. Happier employees tend to want to bring other happy people into the fold to work with them.
Mm.
And so it's sort of a cycle. You treat your employees well, they're going to bring in good employees to join you.
Mm. And I think also as well, I mean, just in human nature, if an individual has their basic needs met, they're going to be able to sort of turn their empathy outwards towards other people, and also be able to look at improving things around them for other people, whether that be the people that work with them, or the customers that they interact with. They'll be a lot more willing to improve everything around them once they feel safe and comfortable themselves.
100%. 100%. Once you allow employees the room to grow,
Mm-hmm.
they'll take a bullet for you.
Mm. You speak a lot about customer experience for the ND community, and I wonder what have you noticed? Has there been large changes recently, or are you more from the standpoint that we need to make more changes?
Changes are starting.
Yeah,
It's taking time.
yeah,
They're starting. Companies move slow. That's just the way it is. But they are definitely starting to move.
yeah.
I'm seeing when the companies get the positive results and see the benefits, then they start to move quicker.
Yeah.
Just,
And
as expected.
and for the benefit of the listener, when we talk about customer experience, we're talking about physical spaces of businesses.
Physical spaces, allowing employees to work differently, tons of different ways.
Mm-hmm. So what are you finding? What have you found was the biggest sort of challenges that they're not getting right?
A lot of companies still treat mental health as something that can be cured with Hawaiian shirt day, right? Instead of offering actual quantitative help, instead of offering access to therapists, instead of allowing employees to work in a way that suits them, you're here on Friday, each get a slice of pizza, is not a solution to mental health issues.
Yeah, it's like a superficial. We care about neurodiversity. Yeah, I'm
Exactly.
just thinking whether I could probably have my own Hawaiian shirt day Friday, just for me.
Exactly.
Um, so tell me more about the book Faster Than Normal. How long ago did you write that, and what was your reaction to the success of that? How did you handle that?
So Fast and Normal, when it came out because I launched a podcast of the same name about a year
Yeah.
earlier. And the podcast blew up, and I got this idea to write a book on it, and it's currently in its fifth printing. It's doing really well. Yeah, like I said, my first New York Times bestseller, my first book that to this day still generates revenue, which blows my mind. For me, it's really about, and it's the same reason I wrote the kids book as well. Growing up, like I said, for me, I wasn't aware of what ADHD was. And so it was really tough. I mean, I was told by teachers just to sit down. I had a teacher who said, why don't you just sit in the back and try to sleep? Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. And so writing both the books allowed me to sort of use my platform as a way to explain to people that they're not broken.
Mm-hmm.
And especially kids, if we could teach kids at age 6 that they're not broken, but they're gifted, they're not going to have to spend the next 30 years being told they're broken, and the next 30 years after that in therapy to try to undo that damage.
Yeah, I think that's the challenging thing. If you're diagnosed later on in life, you haven't realized that the challenges that you're facing are why they are
100%.
connected with the ADHD, and so you develop these negative labels, and that's really sort of the hardest thing to remove. How difficult was it to adapt the book to the children's book? Did you have
It really wasn't hard. For me, it was I basically told my story. I mean, I updated it a little bit. I tried to figure out what it'd be like if I was a kid today. I probably would have gotten diagnosed with ADHD. And the children's book was designed to let kids know they're not strange, they're not different, they're not broken, that they're perfectly great the way they are, and they have gifts that they need to learn how to use.
I wonder, because obviously you mentioned when you were younger you had real difficulties sitting still, and so it sounds like you sort of very outwardly representing ADHD. Do you have like well, the faster than normal is talking about the speed at which your brain works. Do you have any challenges with that in terms of, like, for me, I wouldn't have represented or presented, sorry, as a fidgety boy or anything like that, or sort of not being able to sit still. But for me, it's just everything's internal inside my head, and I wonder, have you found it challenging with sort of overthinking inside your head, or do you have like a way of externalizing it and processing it? Maybe the writing is really helpful with that.
Well, overthinking is definitely a trait of those with ADHD. But on the flip side, so is impulsivity. Acting without thinking, or acting sort of without doing the research. But that's beneficial in a lot of ways. It's also very dangerous, but it's beneficial because I've started every company just by saying, hey, I wonder what would happen if I did this. Oh, I'm going to do this and see what happens. I've failed a lot, but I've succeeded a lot. The issue becomes when the impulsivity is not tempered, when you don't have guardrails up to help control it. I see a lot of, I saw a lot of that in my marriage. I just come up with these, hey, I booked this ticket to go somewhere this weekend and go on vacation. It sounds great. It sounds spontaneous. It sounds romantic, except if my wife at the time had, already had plans.
Yeah.
Right. So it's sort of learning to temper that. But I would say that overthinking is also a part of it. One of the things that I do to avoid overthinking, I heard a great quote, and this was by a Peloton instructor. He said, the cure for anxiety is action. And I just, nothing truer has ever been said. For me, it's really about, I get up every morning and I exercise. Sometimes it's as simple as just doing a stretching, a 10-minute stretch, but I do something to get the dopamine flowing and to start my day. Because, when you're ADHD, when you're neurodiverse, you assume every day is, at least for me, every day is gonna be the day that I'm found out, that people find out I'm totally full of shit, totally a fraud, whatever. And, I'm not, and it's never happened. It probably won't ever happen because I don't think I'm a fraud. But, there's a constant overthinking that, oh, wow, every bit of success you've had has all been luck and all been a fluke. And
yeah,
today's the day the New York Times is going to write a huge article on what a fraud you are. And when they don't do it, it's obviously because I'm not important enough for the New York Times to write an article on how. So, you have this constant battle. So getting up and getting on the bike or going for a run or something like that does tend to solve that problem.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important as well, because if you don't do that exercise, or you don't have any of that sort of slow release dopamine coming into your body at the start of the day, you can find yourself sitting in that chimp brain, just sort of stuck in the overthinking, whatever, and just physically bringing yourself to move can be a challenging thing at times. I just wondered, we're talking about the impulsivity and the ideas, and you have started a number of businesses. I just wonder, how do you control that impulsivity now? Do you have a lot more of a rigorous idea filter to say, Okay, that is a good idea, but I'm not going to start a new business today"? Or how does that work
Yeah,
now?
I mean, I do. Again, I have an assistant who, I'll ask to put something in the calendar, and every once in a while she'll say, "Do you really want to do that?" Like I got invited to an event a couple of months ago, and it started at like 10 p.m.
Yeah,
I'm 52,
yeah,
right? 10 p.m. is obscene,
yeah.
at 52, and but I'm like, oh, this sounds really cool. I totally want to do it. I sent to Megan. She goes, "You really want to do that,
Yeah,
or is that something that 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours before you're going to tell me to cancel?"
yeah,
I'm like, "You're 100% right. I shouldn't." And she was right, 100%. So it becomes one of those things where you rely on smart people who don't necessarily have your fast brain, who can help you sort of get out of that uh, uh, space, right?
yeah. I wonder if I'm interested to know which ideas have never, they're on the cutting room floor and have never seen the light of day, but they were really sort of outlandish. Or so, for example, with me, I love learning new things, and if you go into my Udemy account, the online courses thing, it's just it's a wild thing. People are like, Who is this person?" Like, is learning to play the drums, or learning to be a PT instructor, or this, that, and the other, all random things completely spread all over the place. And it's like, yeah, I genuinely thought I was going to do all of these things, and that was going to
No
be what
question
I'd do
about
for the rest of my life. What's some of the crazy things that you thought was going to be a new direction in your life that never happened?
I mean, look, I was supposed to be a photographer. I was supposed to be a fashion portrait photographer. That's what I went to grad school for.
Yeah.
It's life happens when you're busy making other plans, right? So for me, a lot of it is being able to roll with it, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. So, what's the latest thing that you've been working on at the moment? You were telling me before we started recording about Source of Sources.
So yeah, so Source of Sources is a platform, a free service that matches journalists with sources. So if you're knowledgeable about anything, you sign up at sourceofsources.com. It's totally free. And you get queries, 2 emails a day with about 15 to 20 queries from journalists in each email. And if you can answer the journalist, you simply respond.
Hmm.
And the journalist might email you back and say, "Hey, I'm going to use you in whatever." It's a great way to get free press for you, for your business, for your corporation. Totally free.
Hmm.
Journalists from the New York Times, the Sun, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, People, Entertainment Weekly, CNN, everywhere.
Yeah. And how long has that been going now?
I launched it about 4 months ago. It's growing really well. We have about 23,000 members. Um, and yeah, it's doing really, really well.
Yeah. And where did you spot the need for that? Because I mean, journalism has changed a lot, I suppose, since social media. Yeah, I've noticed that a lot of journalism tends to be just reporting what they've read on social media, as opposed to sort of more traditional uh, way of writing articles and things like that. So, what spurred the idea, essentially?
I launched a company called Help a Reporter Out back in 2007 because I talk to everyone. My ADHD means I talk to everyone. And so
Yeah.
journalists would call me all the time and say, "Hey, you have a huge Rolodex. Who do you know?" And
Hmm.
I do a story on whatever I need a source. And it just took too much of my time. So eventually I wound up launching a company called Help a Reporter, built it huge, sold it to a company called Vocus. Vocus is now Cision. And it's been about 14 years since I sold it. And I just, they made a lot of changes to it. I didn't really feel it was as useful as it once was. And I'm like, I could probably do this better. And so I started a new one.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. And I'm interested to know as well, just before we wrap up, with the podcast Faster Than Normal, was that your the only podcast you've ever done? Did you always want to do a podcast? How do you enjoy doing it as well?
Good question. I love doing it. Each episode is only 15 minutes because ADHD.
Yeah.
Which is great. The guests love that. I've had some really high level famous people on the podcast, governors and the rock band Shinedown and Dave Nealman, who founded JetBlue, and Seth Godin, and all these people. I've had Olympic medalists. I've had, and they all love the fact that, it's only 15 minutes. Sure, I could do that.
Yeah.
And there's no prep. We just start talking. And so for me, it's great. It's nice because I get to listen.
Yeah.
Which is a great way to shut off my brain for a little bit. I get to listen to people and learn from them, as opposed to constantly being the one like this where I have to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, I can definitely recommend that everybody go and check it out, because it is a great podcast. It is the Faster Than Normal podcast. It shares the same name as the book, which I do also recommend that the listeners go and check out as well. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for being an awesome guest on the show, and thanks very much for talking to me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I'm a fan, and I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for listening this far. If you want to hear more episodes, then please subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you use. It really helps to spread the word. So if you know anyone this episode could help, then please share it with your friends. If you want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram at ADHD_goals, and you can find me on Facebook too. If you want to get in touch with the show, then you can email me at hello@adhdgoals.co. And finally, if you're struggling to manage your ADHD and you would like me to be your coach, then please head over to my website and get in touch. Until next time, bye for now.